Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP28 in Dubai. Ambitious, just together.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. So what we want to discuss today is turning visions into reality, how to connect the dots along the hydrogen value chain. A question which is very crucial, not only for Germany, but for the globe as well. But Germany has gone a long way to develop hydrogen technologies, hydrogen markets, and hydrogen use. So welcome. Thank you to the Ministry of Economy and Climate Protection, who is our host today. So as you might have noticed, we had slight changes of plan. We had expected our Minister, Robert Habeck, to be here. Unfortunately, he was not able to travel here because, as you might know, there are some discussions about the federal budget in Germany. And so he was very, very, very sorry he had to stay in Berlin. What we will have now is Mr. Philipp Nimmermann is going to address us very soon from Berlin. He's the State Secretary for Energy in the Ministry of Robert Habeck. And afterwards, we will have a very renowned panel to discuss all the matters which are in question or are at stake. Hydrogen has been growing very strongly as an issue since a few years. It's no new thing, so we used and still use a lot of hydrogen, not only in Germany, but around the globe. But green hydrogen and hydrogen as a replacement for gas in the future has been a rather new development, and so there's a lot of strong development going on over the globe. I would like to start now with an overview from a very renowned specialist. Mr. Rösch from the IRENA is here. He's the director at the Innovation and Technology Center in the International Renewable Energy IRENA, sitting in Dubai. And he's going to give us an overview where we stand from a global perspective on the issue of hydrogen. And after that, we will have the interview with Mr. Nimmermann. And after that, we're going into our panel discussion. Mr. Rösch, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Holger, for this nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the International Renewable Energy Agency. For the ones that don't know, this is a governmental organization with 169 member governments looking into the global energy transition perspectives and helping our member countries to increase the share of renewable energies and to implement them. So, turning visions into reality, how to connect the dots along the hydrogen value chain. Ladies and gentlemen, so it's a pleasure to be here today and have the opportunity to share our latest insights on the global development of green hydrogen. I'm here to speak about the current global status of green hydrogen and demand and supply structures. I will elaborate on the opportunities and challenges associated with this, with a specific focus on Europe. Last but not least, I would like to highlight some potential solutions to address the challenges. On future green hydrogen, demand and supply trends, I want to start with the question, which role green hydrogen play in a net zero energy system? According to IRENA's World Energy Transition Outlook, which is our key flagship report that guides the membership in the energy transition, most emission reductions will come from energy efficiency and renewable electricity. By 2050, renewable electricity will be the primary carrier constituting 1.5% of final energy consumption, with 40% being indirect use as hydrogen and its derivatives, so like methanol and ammonia. Even so, hydrogen will not make the largest part of the final energy consumption. It needs to be massively scaled up. We expect a six-fold increase in hydrogen demand compared to our current consumption of around 90 million tons per year. This 90 million tons per year, is important to know, are not green. They are coming from fossil fuels by 96%. Our projection suggests the potential of consumption of 530 million tons of green hydrogen by 2050. That will require around 5,600 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity. 5,700 gigawatt, I think it's an amazing figure. It's worth highlighting the remarkable dynamics at play. Our calculation from last year's indicated 614 million tons per year in 2050. Why is that? It is because technologies continue to progress fast. For example, we can now directly electrify electric trucks and implement higher temperature heat pumps, proving that projections related to projects on green hydrogen demand are quite dynamic. Also last year, we anticipated a distribution of 70 to 75% green hydrogen and 25 to 30% blue hydrogen. In our new projections from the VITO 2023, we observe a shift with around 94% being green hydrogen and only 6% will be blue hydrogen. So again, why is this? It reflects current market trends. In the first quarter of this year, we have witnessed over 400 green hydrogen projects globally. This trend underscores a market preference very clear for green hydrogen over blue hydrogen. It is crucial to bear in mind that trends in the hydrogen sectors are very dynamic. Looking closer at the supply side, we quickly realize that one challenge is the massive renewable electricity deployment required for massive green hydrogen deployment. The amount of electricity needed to produce all this green hydrogen by 2050 is equivalent to the global electricity consumption today. So what we need to produce green hydrogen by 2050 is all the electricity we have as a demand at the moment. And that's solely for the production of green hydrogen. So innovation is still crucial to ensure that we can produce this green hydrogen at lowest possible cost. Take, for instance, the electrolyzer efficiency. A mere 1% improvement in electrolyzer efficiency could save us up to 120 gigawatts by 2050. So 1% improvement brings 120 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity by 2050. I find this quite amazing. So we see there's a very important space for innovation. To put this into perspective, that amount equals the total installed power capacity of Spain today. How does Europe come into this picture? So considering this now, how does Europe and Germany fit into the global picture? First and foremost, the European Union will be one of the three major markets importing green hydrogen and its products. Alongside the European Union, only South Korea and Japan are following this approach. On the other hand, we observe numerous potential green hydrogen suppliers. According to our models, the global technical potential for green hydrogen is almost 20 times the estimated global primary energy demand in 2050. The future international green hydrogen market won't resemble today's oil market, characterized by a small number of suppliers and a large number of importers. It might be the opposite, an oligopsone. What crucial is ensuring the transport of low-emission hydrogen and commodities necessitating certification for environmental integrity. Europe is strategically positioned for hydrogen imports to meet the future demand of hard-to-abate sectors. So the hard-to-abate sectors is the shipping sector, aviation, industry, and also heating and cooling. We anticipate various commodities being imported to the European Union for these different applications. It's vital to ensure that infrastructure planning, and that's a very important point that Irina emphasizes all the time, it is vital to ensure that infrastructure planning aligns at the local, national and at the European levels. So infrastructure to build up, this is key. This year, the European Union demonstrated bold policy making with the adoption of 2 delegated acts where the European Commission outlined detailed rules on the European definition of renewable hydrogen. This marks the conclusion of a period of uncertainty regarding the rules and regulations governing one of the future major green hydrogen importing markets. A significant step, the recent launch of the European Hydrogen Bank and its first auction call for domestic production of renewable hydrogen just a few days ago is another noteworthy important step. Insights from the collaborative framework of green hydrogen. So Irina is organizing dialogues between the industry and policymakers through the collaborative frameworks on green hydrogen. Also, besides the European Union, we have witnessed a massive increase in hydrogen strategies and roadmaps worldwide in recent years. The political momentum is evident. However, having plans and strategies is one thing. The crucial step is turning them into action. At IRENA, we utilized our collaborative framework on green hydrogen to do just that. Taking stock of the current global green hydrogen landscape after years of developing strategies and announcing projects. With our nearly universal membership at IRENA, we convened representatives from future demand centers and potential export countries. This gathering allowed us to assess where we stand and which challenges exist. Some of the key takeaways are: first, international cooperation is required. International green hydrogen value chains can be highly complex, especially when they span long distances. Managing, coordinating various value chains, stages across different geographical locations require careful consideration and strategic planning. Second, we need the right financing mechanisms. Green hydrogen projects are highly capital intensive, making investment decisions very complex. Less than 10% of announced projects reach at the moment the final investment decisions. It's more than 4 as 10. We need to create an environment where more projects can unfold. We also need to find a way to measure the social and economic impacts of green hydrogen for these investments and projects and incorporate this into the financial mechanisms. 3, scaling up. We need to focus on scaling up the already available electrolysis technologies to reach the gigawatt scale and make them as efficient as possible. 4, effective regulation and reducing bureaucracy is essential. For instance, we need to streamline the permitting process, which are still very complex for the electrolyzer projects, to prevent them to become bottlenecks. So regulation to remove bottlenecks is key. 5, we need to ensure knowledge transfer and the creation of a skilled workforce. So IRENA is really not tired to make the point that the energy transition needs a stable workforce and people have to be trained today to deal with these technologies and operate them. So to wrap up here, to sum this up, the green hydrogen landscape is rapidly evolving and we witness a remarkable speed in the development. The European Union is positioned to be among the select few markets importing green hydrogen, complemented by robust policy making. The focal point remains the deployment of renewable energies, both within the European Union and on a global scale. This imperative task must be accompanied by establishment of the right financing mechanisms and fostering strong international cooperation. So cooperating is key. That's also why we are here. Thank you very much. I hope that was interesting for you. Thank you. I close here.
Yeah, thank you, Roland. This was really interesting. I think it has become very clear. So this numbers you've told us, it's very clear how huge the challenge is, but of course how huge the chances could be. And therefore, thank you for this remarkable contribution to our panel now. So I would now switch to Germany, and I hope that State Secretary Nimmermann is... I see him. Hello. Hello, State Secretary
Hello.
Nimmermann.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's morning in Germany, I know, 3 hours. We appreciate, but I could imagine that you would be in the office anyway at this hour. So, Mr. Nimmermann, thank you for joining us here in Dubai. So we have a good crowd here, very interesting crowd, and just heard a lot from Mr. Rösch on the dimension of the global hydrogen market. And I would start with a question to you. So where would you place Germany in the broader picture today in this global race for a hydrogen market build-up?
Thank you very much. I think Germany is definitely a front runner with regards to hydrogen ramp up. That's from two sides, from the demand side, but also from the technology and innovation point of view. The hydrogen will play a major role in the decarbonization of the German economy. That's for two reasons. We are a very industrialized country, and there are industries where it's hard to abate using molecules, and that's for steel industry and other industries. So that's a very major part of the German economy, still the hard-to-abate economy. And the second one will be the energy supply. As you know, that Germany is planning and already relies a lot on renewable energies, and we're planning to rely even more on your renewable energies. But for those hours where the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing, we need other means of energy, and that will be based on hydrogen. Hydrogen as an electricity storage, hydrogen for power plants. So from the demand side, very important. We already heard the numbers. We have calculated in our scenarios that the demand for hydrogen in 2030 will be something between 90 and 130 terawatt hours per year. And that is the double amount of the current situation. And although we have planned to ramp up the installation of electrolyzers in Germany, our aim is now for 2030 from 5 gigawatts to 10 gigawatts to increase that. And something has been said about the regulation, everything in regards to the ramping up of electrolyzers already. We will not be able to produce all the hydrogen needed in Germany. So something between perhaps 50 to 70% of that hydrogen will have to be imported. And therefore, we heavily rely on cooperation projects and on a working value chain, supply chain worldwide, and something already has been said about that. On the second hand, the industry is very innovative here in Germany. I think we will supply a major part of the technology demand worldwide from German companies, and the major companies will be in Dubai as well, presenting themselves. And to help develop and ramp up this hydrogen economy in Germany, we're supporting companies with various support programs, and I think that is very important to see that we probably, from not only from the demand side, but also from the technology supply side, probably a very important front runner worldwide.
Thank you. Well, this year, 2023, was a year where we've seen some milestones happening. So we've seen the National Hydrogen Strategy revisited after quite a discussion process, and we've seen the Delegated Act in the European Union, the Hydrogen Bank, and so on. Would you say that 2023 until now has been a good year for what we envision to see developing on the field of hydrogen?
I think, yes, I think 2023 is a crucial year. You already mentioned that we updated our national hydrogen strategy, and apart from ramping up the electrolyzers and various other measures, we decided that we will have three guiding principles for the hydrogen economy. Our hydrogen infrastructure, will be color neutral, so any type of hydrogen can flow through this infrastructure. We would support the usage of hydrogen and support it also financially if it's green hydrogen or blue hydrogen with very low carbon hydrogen. That's one where we would support the application of hydrogen. For the production of hydrogen, we will only support the production of green hydrogen coming from renewable energy. So that's this three-step approach we have with the different support schemes. I think that is very important to know. We have got various support schemes where we support the industry in the development phase, in the construction phase, in the implementation phase. We've got H2 Global. I think that is a very good competitive mechanism where you can find out where is the supply price of hydrogen worldwide and where is the demand price of hydrogen currently in Germany, and we will fill the gap between those two equilibrium prices for the time being to ramp that up. And I think the gas already has been mentioned. It's also important to focus on the Green Hydrogen Fund of the European Investment Bank. Germany has will announce that we will top up our contribution to this fund by another 125 million euros to support investments in technical assistance, international green hydrogen projects, and the entire value chain we've already been talking about. I think that is really, really important and also shows the strong commitment of the German government.
Well, let's have a fast-forward look. I mean, 2045, Germany wants to be climate neutral. Where do you see Germany, or what would be your vision for Germany and hydrogen usage and markets and technologies? What would be your vision for Germany in the year 2045 as a player in the hydrogen business?
I think we will be an important player for two reasons. As I already mentioned, that our electricity system will be based on renewables and topped up with hydrogen. At the moment, we're importing roughly 70% of our energy resources, 70%. Our projections and scenario analysis say that by 2045, this import ratio and quota will be reduced from 70% to 30%. In the future, we will not anymore import fossil fuels. What we will import is green electricity and green hydrogen and derivatives of that. Those are the two ones which we will be importing. And that actually shows us that our strategy of decarbonizing the economy is not only sustainable for the environment and the climate, but also for the resilience of the German economy, because we will reduce our dependency on energy imports. We have just been in the final phase of organizing a hydrogen backbone with 10,000 kilometers of hydrogen pipelines. Some of them retrofits, some of them newly built. And we're currently building this backbone with the double capacity we actually need by 2030. This backbone should be in place in 2032 onwards. So we're really planning big for the future. What we do need is cooperation, international cooperation with partners. The companies will cooperate. We have been signing various joint declarations of confident intention and MOUs with other countries where we try to exchange our views, where we discuss how can we ensure that we talk about the same thing with certificates, technical problems, legal problems. All that is happening at the moment. Our economy, our companies are well equipped for this cooperation, and I'm looking forward to 2045 being a climate neutral Germany, and with hydrogen being a very important factor within this scenario.
Well, thank you, State Secretary Nimmermann. So my fourth question would be, can you give us details on the deal the government is having on the federal budget? But I think I can skip this question.
Well tried.
Yeah. No, I wish you all the best, and these are very, very demanding days for all of you. And thank you for joining us. And goodbye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I just wanted to try to ask the question, but probably a bit too courageous. So now let's get to our panel, and I would like to ask my panelists up on stage now. I would start with Clara Bowman. Clara Bowman is the Chief Operations Officer of HIF Global. She's there running the global operations of the company. So she's running global operations of hydrogen. That's something which is great to have on stage when everybody's talking about hydrogen. She's operating. Our next guest is Lavinia Bauer-Ochse. She's the global head of ESG at the Deutsche Bank's corporate bank. And she's a member of the Divisional Executive Committee of Corporate Banking. And in her role, she's in charge of the dialogue with all of the stakeholders on sustainable finance. So then we have Erika Mink. Erika Mink, she's the head of Regulatory and Governmental Affairs at ThyssenKrupp Steel Europe. Mr. Osburg, who was advised, he unfortunately couldn't make it due to health issues. But I know Erika Mink for many, many years, and I'm very glad to have you as a very experienced person here on stage. And then Tom Houtekiet. Tom, I hope this is pronounced right. Oh, thank you. Tom Houtekiet, he's the chief, we're working for the port of Antwerp. Didn't find it here. And he is one of the guys who is in charge of building up the infrastructure. So the west ports of Europe are playing a huge role. And last but not least, I'm very glad to have you here, Katharina Reiche. Katharina Reiche, well, she knows what she's talking about. She studied chemistry. That's very important and very impressive. She's the CEO of West Energie AG. That's a daughter company of E.ON, and she's in charge of grids and networks. But she's the chairwoman of our National Hydrogen Council, and therefore I think she can give us a lot of good impressions on where we are. So let's start, and I would like to start with you, Katharina. Well, we've heard State Secretary Nimmermann, and he seemed to be very optimistic. We all know there have been a lot of discussions in Germany about where we are on hydrogen and where we go. Basically, the hydrogen issue has taken a jump start since 2019, when we switched from minus 80 to 95% to climate neutrality, which of course made the case for green molecules absolutely immediately important. And I know we were in Australia in 2019, talked to the government, and we talked about green hydrogen. There was a sort of a puzzlement in the faces. And since then, a lot of things have happened. And so my question to you is, Katharina, as the chairwoman of the National Hydrogen Council, where would you see Germany right now? Would you be as optimistic as our State Secretary has been just right now?
Thank you first for the invitation and putting this impressive round together, Holger. I'm happy to be here. Well, I'm an optimist by profession, and that's why I would like to start with some optimistic remarks in the beginning. Yes, the glass is half full because we have seen some important decisions over the last couple of weeks. First, the already mentioned Hydrogen Bank and the first pledge. So the Hydrogen Bank kind of, if I may say, copied the H2 Global principle and leveraged it on an EU level and make the first bid. First for the producer, and if I'm right informed, there will be a second round very soon where it comes then for the offtake market. And the offtake market, Europe is industrialized, Germany is industrialized area, will be very important. Second important decision is that both TSO and DSOs are allowed to operate and to run hydrogen grids. Infrastructure is key, so we focus a lot on production, what's good. We focus on the offtake markets, what's also important. But to connect both is mostly common as hen and egg problem. So the decision that today's gas grid operators, who are obviously experts in what they are doing, are allowed to convert their grids into hydrogen, that's a very important step too. Third thing, I think we have impressive, innovative and competitive companies. I mean, Thyssen is here, so they have the IPO of Nucera. We have other electrolyzer companies. We are good in coating and research and development of material science. All this is important to shape the future. Then the import strategy is going to shape on a German level. What's also of utmost important, Tom will tell us how we get the molecules in. So Germany has to take care of where to get the molecules from, because we will import at least 80% of our demand, and therefore we have import cooperation and partnerships. And last but not least, State Secretary Nimmermann just mentioned is on the way. I will repeat this. The German government put a new 125 million amount of money into the EIB for new green hydrogen fund. What's again a lot of money, because, and here is maybe a little bit shadow, how to finance all the investments which are needed, both when it comes to renewable and when it comes to the offtake market, and also in converting the existing infrastructure. That is a question what isn't really solved at whole. It's gonna be expensive, and we need not only public money, we need the private money, and how to leverage funded euro from public, how to leverage this in a smart way by the private sector. I think that isn't, that is a task we have really to work on, and I think here we lost a little bit time over the last years.
So thank you for setting the scene. I mean, surprisingly, we have every aspect on the stage. And so we can tick through the boxes which are necessary for a market. I would like, Erika Mink, I would like to start with ThyssenKrupp. ThyssenKrupp is so you're representing ThyssenKrupp Steel, but of course that's a family, and a company which always amazes me. I mean, it's a company which is in producing steel, is so reliant on having a concept to decarbonize, to keep their license to operate. On the other hand, ThyssenKrupp with Nucera is one of the front runners in electrolyzer technology. So perhaps from your perspective, where would you, after a very interesting year for ThyssenKrupp Steel, especially for getting the FDI on FID on the first direct reduction installation here in Germany. So where will you say ThyssenKrupp is standing now, and are you optimistic that this is now going the right way for keeping ThyssenKrupp Steel, especially in Europe, producing in the future green steel?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, like you, Katharina, we have to be optimistic, and the glass is half full. But it is only half full. So we have taken this investment decision, about 3 billion euros for the first hydrogen-ready direct reduction plant. So it should be ready by end of 2026, and theoretically, as of 2027, we need huge amounts of hydrogen. Of course, it will not be there, so we can still, for the early years, we can still bridge with natural gas. But as of 2028, in our planning, we need to have hydrogen, and also already substantial amounts of green hydrogen. So the diggers are rolling. So the project is in implementation, and we will have the call for tenders. We will launch for hydrogen. We will launch in Q1 next year. So of course, you know, we have some concerns that the infrastructure will not be ready on time, and we also see that probably, you know, if we have a longer term perspective towards total carbon neutrality by very latest 2045, we probably have to be climate neutral earlier, because on the conventional steel we will not be cost competitive as of the mid-30s. So we have to be really, really fast. And we also know that on the long term, I mean, there will be less and less public support. Right now, we get substantial public support from the German and the federal and the local government. But of course, we have to build markets for these green products. We have to build markets. We have to build lead markets. But we also have to make sure that green hydrogen is being cost competitive. So we are also quite very eager to see, how the cost for green hydrogen can decline over the years. We look very much to the U.S. With the IRA. The price differential is, as we suspect, somewhere between factor 5 and factor 10. So also we think we should, when it comes to regulation and requirements, we should be perhaps more flexible in order really to gain speed, and also to very much consider we may not need to have the golden solutions at the start, but we have to get started and maybe also apply 80-20 rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Clara, HIF has become very prominent in Germany, not only because there is some German stuff, which is well known to all of us here. But he's standing there, Thorsten, hi. But it has become very, very prominent with the so-called Porsche project in Chile. But of course, now in Texas and some other things, investing big time. So from your perspective, and I said it's very great to have somebody on the panel who is really doing operating business on hydrogen, because we have hundreds of people who are talking about hydrogen business. So you are one who is doing hydrogen business. So where would you see, for a starter, where are we in this process of really building up a hydrogen production business market, which then makes it easier for people like Erika to take a decision, or people like Tom to take a decision, and Lavinia to finance people who want to take decisions?
Well, I saw that the title of this program is Turning Vision to Reality, and that's really what we did with our first plant that's now operating in the south of Chile. Is we had a vision of proving that hydrogen and its derivatives, e-fuels in our case, was something that could be done now. There was no technological barriers to being able to do it. We had a vision in the beginning of 2020, and in the end of 2022, we were producing our first molecules of green methanol and green gasoline from that plant. And so we really pushed to get that done. But obviously, one plant like that is not going to solve global warming, and so we're trying to scale that up as much as we can and as quickly as we can. And I would say there's some things that the German government are doing which are really positive. I want to start with the positives and then maybe look at some areas where you could improve. One of the areas where it's been very positive has been the recent regulation which has come out around jet fuel, which has a specific quota for e-fuels incorporated in there. And that's really important because having security of volume for these projects makes off-takers feel a lot more comfortable that if they believe that you are a competitive project, that you're located in a low-cost place, you will be able to sell those volumes because those volumes are secured. There's a minimum volume that's going into that market, and if you're low enough on the cost curve, you're going to be able to supply into that. Why is it important to have these kind of volume mechanisms at the beginning of these processes? Is that e-fuels are more expensive right now. Producing hydrogen is more expensive. How can that cost curve come down? How can we be more competitive? Frankly, by doing things. Just thinking about it and talking about it and discussing maybe having a project is not going to drive that cost down. The only way it's going to actually come down is by manufacturing on a very large scale these sorts of pieces of equipment. And if you look at, for example, the solar or wind industries, that's exactly what happened. The costs were very high. You start manufacturing on a large scale. You start doing these projects on a gigawatt scale. And those prices come down until you get to the stage where in many places renewables are actually the obvious choice because they're cheaper than the fossil alternatives. And that's what we really need to do if we want to be able to address climate change in 2050 and be able to have these kind of things on the scale that are needed without really overcharging to people. So where are we coming up against some barriers in being able to sell our products in Europe? We're developing very large-scale projects all around the world, as you said. One of the barriers that we're hitting up against is the definition of RFNBO in the European market. For those who aren't e-fuels nerds, that's a renewable fuel of non-biological origin, which is basically the premium market for e-fuels in the European market. And what's been done there is really taking a European-focused view of regulation and then kind of just saying everyone else in the rest of the world needs to comply with that regulation, otherwise your product is not green. And there's two elements of that in particular that are problematic. One is a prohibition on state aid for electricity. Now, my colleague Thorsten assures me that there is a rationale for that within the European market, which I don't completely follow, but I'll take his word for it. But where it doesn't make any sense is outside of the European market. So there are many export destinations, starting with our friends in the United States, but many other places in the world, who are quite happy to subsidise the production of renewable energy if that's going to make us as producers more competitive and be able to bring out that export market. And what that's doing fundamentally is we are sharing the cost of this energy transition with the offtake markets like Germany and the exporters who are also trying to build up their position as exporters. But right now, how the definition works in Germany, if we're getting subsidised on our renewable energy, then we're no longer green. And we can't do that. And so that gets us to a kind of absurd situation where we're saying, no, don't make our product cheaper. We want to sell exactly the same product at a higher price in Europe. And that doesn't really make sense for anyone. The second element, which as an e-fuel producer, so we use carbon dioxide in our process, recycled carbon dioxide, is that under the European legislation, they say, okay, industrial CO2 is fine, but only up until 2041, I think is the date. That, okay, we understand there should be an end date, okay. But then only if you are part of a approved carbon trading mechanism, which at the moment is only the European carbon trading mechanism. So what that means is that in a country where you don't have an approved carbon trading mechanism, which is most of the countries in the global south, and where there's a strong argument that they should not have that in place because they're still developing their economies, we can have a perfectly acceptable source of carbon if that same factory was located in Europe, but we're not able to use that. So we have to start jumping through hoops and contorting ourselves to get biogenic CO2 at a higher cost and probably a higher carbon footprint ultimately to be able to bring it to our plant than we would be able to use otherwise. And so that again just puts on an extra cost. Those factories are going to be operating, they're going to be producing CO2 for the next 20 years no matter what we do. It creates an extra cost and an extra barrier without really having a big environmental benefit. And so I think if we could just fix those two areas of the legislation, then that would really free up a lot of product coming into Europe at a lower cost, be more competitive and share the cost of this energy revolution between all of the different countries that are going to benefit from it.
Thank you. I think we will come back to this. The question, is our regulatory framework really good to support a global, very strong hydrogen market developing? Tom, so we recently had a breakfast on Antwerp's really strong ambition to be, well, one of the, they're Dutch in the public, in the audience. So we have to mention that there's another Westport in Europe. No, but you having a really strong vision on making Antwerp one of the hubs and a great hub for this whole new future of green molecules coming for wherever, going to wherever. Even the CO2 cycle is playing a role. So, I mean, we have Erika, they need hydrogen. We have Clara producing hydrogen abroad. So you are connecting the dot or you are the connecting dot to get the hydrogen from where it is produced to where it is needed. So what is your view on the actual situation for you and your investment plans? Do you think that governments are doing the right thing to make you feel comfortable with all of these huge investments?
First, maybe my title. My title is Chief Business Developer and Transition Officer. So in fact, I'm a commercial director, but focusing on the transition. I think hydrogen should be very female if I look at the panel. Congratulations for that. What are we doing as a port? Indeed, the Port of Antwerp and the Port of Rotterdam, in fact, it's completely the same exercise we have, is that we both will be the importation hub, the importer, the Panama Channel to Germany, of course also a part for ourselves. So we are working on three different aspects. First, maybe just to set the situation. First, we try to understand what we need as a hub for ourselves, as a feedstock. We are the biggest petrochemical cluster in Europe, so we need a lot of ammonia as a feedstock. We need it, of course, as heat generation for the Belgian industry. And we count also on, we look at the German figures as we just heard them again, what will be the importation part. We count on 1/3 to deliver to German import needs. All that brings it to a figure of 35 to 50 terawatt-hours a year, or 1.6 million ton of hydrogen, 10 million ton of ammonia as an ambition by 2030. So that's our starting point, and then we look, of course, at the infrastructure. What do we need for that? It's clear by now that, first talking on terminals and cracking installations, that we will have 4 to 5 of them in our port. We are on the process, so we know where they will come. That's already decided. We are in the process of doing the market request. There is a lot of enthusiasm for that and interest for that. Some of them are decided. So next year we will have a first demo installation, 2024. We will have an installation by VTTI, by Fluxys and Advario. So most of them will come between now and 27, 28, somewhere. Backbones, very critical element in the whole infrastructure. We are building hydrogen backbone in Belgium today. Backbone will be ready in the country by 26 and to the German border by 28. That's our timeline. And we are, of course, in very close contact with the German, all levels, industry, authorities, to understand those figures. And then we are looking at the supply side. Where do we get the molecules from? For us, the situation today is that we are on track with all the ambitions Europe has put forward. We do know to whom to talk on the supply side and on the German side also. So I think the roadmaps are clear, the projects are on the design table. The question is the FID. For all those projects we need to take an FID. For most of them, backbones we do ourselves, so that we can do ourselves, and we have taken FIDs. But for terminals, which are private investments, those FIDs have to come in 2025 by the latest, in order to be ready. And there I think Carla mentioned, Clara sort of mentioned some very important points. There we have a complete different system between the European system and the American system. So we have a CapEx-driven system in America. We have a market-creating system in Europe, which is completely different, and which is also very, very, very green and not flexible at all. So for sure there is a risk that you push European industry towards America, that you push really important industry projects in the direction of America. So I think we really need another type, extra support mechanism, which is also looking at CapEx, or which is looking at tax deduction systems. And this we don't have, because people need to push the button today, but only with the idea, knowing what the RED III will bring, what ETS projections will be, is not sufficient to make a project bankable today. And I think that is what we need on a short term.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Lavinia, so the Deutsche Bank is very strong. So we yesterday had a very impressive event in the Four Seasons with a lot of German industry and talking about how they want to get to climate neutrality. But I mean, hydrogen, as I said, it just started a few years ago that we've been talking about green hydrogen as being a very important part of this transformational process. On the other hand, we all hear it costs a lot of money, so we are not in the scaling yet. But anyway, we have to start. Things have to happen. And how do you see the role of the financial sector to enable companies like ThyssenKrupp, like Antwerp or HIF, to bridge this gap of profitability we have until we then get to a time when it's like we've seen it with photovoltaic and wind energy, when we scale down the cost. So what's your take? How can you support those industry players to get where we all want them to go?
Thank you. And in my mind, it's a very natural role the financial service industry and private capital has to play and will play and wants to play. So in the end of the day, our clients are looking for hydrogen, our governments are looking for hydrogen, and we are looking to be a facilitator of the growth elements of it, but also just being part of that solution. So I think we touched on some of the points, in particular Katharina did earlier, which are really helping to facilitate the bankability of projects. Hydrogen, renewable hydrogen in the end is a combination of renewable projects plus electrolysis and industrial scale process integration. So it's about, at the moment, to understand those associated risks. You have, in the end, project on project risks you need to get your head around. And there will be lots of stakeholders needed in that combination, for example, to provide the equity share, to take associated initial risks. That's also one of the reasons why Deutsche Bank was one of the founding members and the first financial institution participating into H2 Global, because H2 Global is actually looking both at the supply and the demand side and is eliminating risks associated with the pricing, because in order to get projects bankable, you really need long-term offset agreements, offtake agreements. And in that sense, many steps have already been taken. We see a lot of activity. We ourselves are also engaged in the first larger scale renewable hydrogen projects we can't disclose yet. But to take this further, I think what has to happen in parallel is not only supply and demand, to think it in simultaneously, but also to look first now into larger scale projects which are integrated, so that you have the company who's at the end integrating into industrial processes on site, so that you take the transport elements out of it for the time being, because I think transport will take more time. And with the latest decisions last week that actually gas pipelines can also now be adapted to hydrogen pipelines, that's a big step forward in order to create bankability on that front as well. And those considerations and ramp-ups now need to happen and need to get started because of permitting and all things associated. But we need to see the first large-scale projects now. My take is they will be more integrated on-site or near-site to the actual consumer or producer who afterwards is taking and integrating renewable hydrogen into their processes. And those projects are going to be bankable. And the participants in that chain are going to learn through that project process, because the risks associated really need to now be figured out. And that's happening as we speak.
Thank you, Lavinia. Katharina, as the chairwoman of our National Hydrogen Council, so we know you know a lot of people, so you talk to a lot of people. When Lavinia is talking about those players, consortia, new players developing, so what's your view on, is there this dynamic inside the business community we need to form new players? So how do you see, especially German industry, developing a sense for becoming a real successful part of this global development?
I see not only innovative and motivated companies from Germany, they are competitive, and now is the but. We talked about which projects are really under FID stage, especially in Europe, and here we lost speed. Why is that? When the EU and pushed by Germany started to think about the IPSAI structures, that was 2017-18. America was watching Europe, what we do there. We gained speed. Then after this, the answer of America was then the IRA. And they again did it in a much more pragmatic way. If I think back in 2020, when 62 projects in Germany applied for the IPSAI, and when I see right now how many have gone through the approval, 3, I think, something like this, a little bit a car or a transport industry, thanks God, some steel projects, but what is with the others? And that is due to the circumstance that Europe kind of sticks to lighthouse projects. So Europe and also Germany, we love lighthouse projects, and lighthouse projects are nice, but they lack what you said, Lavinia, the ability and the willingness to scale up, to become from the first step integrated in an industrial level, and not only a tiny little piece disconnected from all the pieces we need to really ramp up a hydrogen industry. And here we have to find solutions. And one is to look again and more in depth into the EU state aid. Yes, we can argue we don't want to go into OPEX tax credits. But if America does and other regions does too, we will have a disadvantage. Second, State Secretary Nimmermann clearly pointed out that infrastructures are color agnostic. But you mentioned if our standards for what is green hydrogen, what is in RFNBO are so sophisticated and so complicated that nobody outside the EU could produce it, and we lose the ability to import, and I just mentioned the figure, 80% of all hydrogen and its derivatives will be imported in the late 30s or 40s to meet our demand, then we are in trouble. And what I would like to see is a little bit more pragmatism. Look around the international competition. What's Japan and South Korea doing? What is Australia doing? What is North America doing? And learn from each other. I mean, being all the time best of class can sometimes lead to the fact that you're very lonely. And so we should step back and go to the more wanted crowd.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about this now. So this is very often comes, okay, that's a bit complicated, how the Europeans do it, and the IRA. So let's discuss about this a little bit. I mean, somebody told me once on lighthouse mentality. He said, under the lighthouse, it's always dark.
That is what I try to figure out. I mean, a lighthouse project is nice to demonstrate that it could work. But we speak about amounts, we speak about 800 terawatt hours, even more by 2045, that you don't do with some lighthouse projects disconnected from each other. We'll really have to ramp up and to industrialize on a large scale. And that is what the US is doing. And they also think from the very first moment in carbon cycles. So it is not only the hydrogen import, it's also how to reduce CO2. And that is something to think about, a CO2 reuse chain. Either get the CO2 out or to use it also in Europe and in Germany. That is, I think, a piece of the puzzle which is still missing.
Clara, so we met a lot of Australians. We did a large project together with Australia and Germany, a high supply. It was about what would it take to have a partnership between two states. And of course, we met the inevitable Andrew Forrest. Andrew said, I want to have $200 per megawatt per electrolyzer. So we said, oh, isn't it a bit more expensive right now? But he basically asked the right question. How can we drastically down with cost? How can we scale down? So perhaps your perspective, first of all, where do you see, are we getting with the technologies? Is there any hope that we get really a fast and aggressive path with the cost down? And the second thing, you were very polite, talking about sort of complex regulations in Europe. If you were Europe, what would you propose to do to get where we want in terms of cost and dimension?
So I'll answer the first question. I think there's absolutely a huge chance to drive down the cost of hydrogen. If you look at the major driver of cost in an e-fuels project or an ammonia project, aside from renewable energy, where I think we've already seen a massive drop in cost curves, and we're very close to being, I think, as competitive as we're going to be. Of course, we'll keep improving a little bit. But where you really see that there's an opportunity for a massive reduction in cost and an improvement in efficiency, as the first speaker said, which was extremely interesting, 1% efficiency, and you have a huge impact on how much you need to install, is by manufacturing at scale. And to manufacture at scale, you need to get to FID on large-scale projects. And that's where I think that e-fuels have a real role to play, because the beauty of e-fuels is that the product that we are creating doesn't require the world to change at all to be able to be used. And so some of the challenges that we're seeing here when you talk about hydrogen as hydrogen, in terms of having to build out networks, the backbone, the demand, all of the other things that you get when you're using hydrogen as hydrogen, you just don't have with e-fuels. The whole world is already set up to run on hydrocarbons. We're plug and play, we put it in, and you can blend it in, and you can use it straight away. And having even small amounts of e-fuels blended into these massive markets is a huge trigger for production. And the electrolyzers that we use are the same electrolyzers that are going to get used by ammonia projects or by hydrogen projects. So in our case, if we're able to trigger some very large-scale e-fuels projects quickly, all of the benefits are going to be felt in all of the other areas of hydrogen production as well. One of the main barriers in terms of being able to build out that electrolyzer capacity, even for projects like us, is that there are very few suppliers that are able to provide their technology and provide the guarantees that stand behind that technology in such a way that we can finance a very investment-heavy project on the basis of that technology. I think my colleague here is one of the companies that is able to do that. Siemens Energy is another. But there are some very promising electrolyzer technologies that may be a little bit different approach, but can have some very promising outcomes, and we just can't use them because there's no way that we can project finance a project based on that technology, either because it doesn't have the operating history or because that company does not have the financial backbone to give the guarantees that we need. And I think that that's an area for thought in terms of government support. I don't think people need necessarily money in that sense, but what they need is some kind of insurance policy or guarantee program that allows those pieces of equipment to be incorporated in a quick way. That normally happens, that process normally happens over a period of 15 to 20 years. If we're okay with that, then we can keep doing business as usual. We incrementally increase capacity, there's some M&A, they get taken over by another project, and eventually their product can be used. If we want to do that faster, then we're going to have to find a way to break the code, and perhaps that's where some government support would be helpful.
So what you basically are saying is that there are interesting technology routes around, but these companies are not in a position to invest and so we need more risk capital.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm not saying exactly that. I'm saying that me as a project developer, if I want to use an electrolyzer from a company that doesn't have the balance sheet to be able to provide me guarantees, no matter how much I love their technology, I can't use it. I have to go to a company where I feel that they can stand behind that and be able to give those guarantees. And that may be stopping some of these very promising smaller companies from scaling up, and it's stopping having a more dynamic electrolyzer, a more competitive electrolyzer market. And we all know that it's competition that eventually drives down prices and increases productivity.
So Erika, may I ask you I mean, ThyssenKrupp Steel is the one thing, ThyssenKrupp Nucera, perhaps you can say a little bit, how is ThyssenKrupp Nucera planning to maintain its position and really expand its position? Because it's one of the renowned producers of alkaline electrolyzers, so the horse, so the working horse of the electrolyzer business. So how is ThyssenKrupp looking at this?
Yeah, I'm not really so familiar, you know, with the strategies of Nucera, but I mean, you saw, you know, it is still, I mean, it's a they have a very competitive offer. However, also in order to grow the market, you need to scale fast. And that was one of the reasons why there was an IPO, in order to get the capital and to be fast enough. And it is very dynamic, so also innovation has to continue in order to really keep and grow the leading role the company has. But we see the same thing, you know, on the technology now. When I go back to steel, to the new technology we are deploying, it's the same situation. You know, there are 3 companies in the world who can offer the supply and can give us the guarantees and the assurances we need in order to invest. And I think what is not really understood yet, especially not in the policy world, that we are rebuilding a whole new industrial model and on different angles, and it's not just to do you know, to green the energy. It is we build new technology, we build new production, we de facto we build a new industry, and things are still thought in isolation. And that is what slows us down as well. So we try to solve a little issue here, another there, but we don't see it in a holistic way. And I think, again, there the US is much more pragmatic, much faster. They have the systemic view. And that, I think we have to find a way to quickly transition also from our fragmented view to a more systemic approach.
Perhaps, Tom, I mean, so you are in the middle of it all, so you have the demand side, you have the supply side. If you look at the supply side, would you say that Europe is, as Katharina said, losing it to other regions like the Americans? Because you probably are talking to a lot of people who are planning to deliver, to export a lot of green hydrogen, so you should have a perspective on who is growing big. Is Europe stagnating, or because of the IRA being so much easier? I mean, HIF, you have a large project in Texas as well, not in Germany, but in Texas. So how do you see this market developing? Is Europe perhaps missing chances there?
Well, I think on the specifically on the US, you have a lot of we do scan a lot of projects. We also, I think we have more than 450 on the radar. We are not looking at all regions because it does not make sense. We are mainly looking at Northern Africa, Middle East. We are looking at Southern Chile. We are looking at Namibia. And then at Gulf region and eastern coast of Canada. Mm-hmm. In fact, this is what we follow, which projects we do scan and try to build up relations and to make the link between those project developers, our terminals, and potential off-takers in Germany. We try to make that link, that the timelines are aligned. I do think that for specifically, there are quite some differences between the regions. If you talk to Eastern Canada, for instance, they are very much looking at Europe as a destination. Yeah. Question will it be a cost-attractive molecule to arrive here? that's another discussion I think we will have there. I think really the battle a bit on where do we supply is mainly on Middle East. Yeah, do we go to the European direction, or do we go indeed also in the direction of Southeast and Far East Asia? Yeah. So I think Japan, Korea was mentioned, is looking very much at Australia, but is also looking at Middle East. Yeah. And there it's really a little bit to understand how also that how will the European clarity be soon known, because we have all mentioned the questions, and I think that is much more clear also in Japan than it is in Europe. Yeah? So I'm not too afraid, to conclude, I'm not too afraid of the US, because I'm afraid of US as a production center versus Europe as a production center for its industry. So how will we keep the European industry served with cost-attractive energy? That's my major concern. And I do see on the CapEx side that there is much more possible in the States, and that people who are taking decisions on their industry footprints, that they are moving out of Europe. In terms of supply, there I do think that we are losing traction versus Japan for sure, and versus Korea for sure.
So Lavinia, let me come back to the financial sector. So we now heard that, of course, the IRA is quite simple. It's tax reduction, and it develops a large suction for investments and so on. If you look at the global scale, do you have an impression how Europe is doing in this developing global hydrogen market, and what could be an answer? I mean, Europe tried with the NZIA to have an answer. I'm not sure if this is the final answer. So from a financial perspective, what would be your proposal to European governments to keep, first of all, their competitiveness in terms of industry? Because, as we all know, in the beginning you talk about green hydrogen. After a few years, potential importers or exporters are talking about green iron as well. So there is value creation is at stake, of course. So what's your look at this?
So I agree with many things which have already been said, in particular on the IRA. I think one of the biggest advantages is really the pragmatism of knowing very quickly if your project is applicable or not. That's something where it would have been beneficial to have a similar pragmatism, at least in the ramp-up phase for the EU Delegated Act. Still, we now have a clarity out that what the criteria really hold, and that was a very big and important step forward. It's going to be very interesting to see what's actually going to result from that, because if for the EU imports there are certifications required, it will also be interesting to see not only what's the price premium which has been willing to pay for that effort, because at the end that's creating cost. But I think it's very, very important to get certification certainty, like interested importers into Europe have to have very early on clarity if they are achieving certification or not. Will there be a market for renewable hydrogen which isn't called renewable hydrogen? It's a second question. But at the end of the day, we will need multi-sources of hydrogen. And I think one of the biggest levers we haven't touched that much on so far is really to looking into developing the European hydrogen market even further. Of course, we have the EU Hydrogen Bank now looking into production within EU. That's the first step. But I think we will need to have the imports into EU, but also facilitate and really, really think pan-European for the production and lever the benefits we have in the southern areas and the northern areas in order to manage the supply across Europe more holistically. I think that's one of the biggest areas we need to still look more into.
I would like to spend the rest of the time talking a bit about decision making. In the end, it's about companies have to make decisions. And we've now talked about a variety of potential products. So in the beginning we talked about hydrogen, then we talk about green hydrogen. So now we're talking about all sorts of things. So the question is the carrier, ammonia, liquid organic hydrogen carrier, liquid hydrogen, green methane, and all of this. So we see what is very, very normal. There is an explosion of ideas on how we could get green molecules wherever we need them. On the other hand, I see this, of course, is hard for governments to react to, because governments tend, of course, to look at a solution and then support this solution, but this explosion of innovative ideas is a problem, not only for governments, but for companies as well, and for infrastructure guys as well. So perhaps I would like to ask you, Clara, and then Tom, is there sort of a set of potential forms of producing and delivering green molecules where investors could rely on in the future? Or are we going to see a much larger scale of potential technological options?
Well, I think my view is a little bit different, that I think that it's great that there are lots of different ways that we can address the problem. The problem that we have is so large that to only say that only electrification is the answer, or for me to say that only carbon-based e-fuels, whether that's methanol or jet or gasoline, are the answer, or to say that only ammonia is the answer, or only liquid hydrogen is the answer, I think that's not going to address the problem, because we are going to be so focused on one thing that may or may not be. We can't put all of our eggs in one basket. I think that we need to be pragmatic. We need to look at the fundamentals of what it is that is happening, and instead of trying to be prescriptive about the exact way that things are being done, let's ask ourselves the question, is this addressing climate change? Does it make sense? And if the answer is yes, then that's something that should be supported. And so that's something that I think is sometimes missing from this debate, if I'll say it with a lot of respect, especially in Europe, is that people get really obsessed with one particular thing. And then if you're just doing something that's a little bit different from that, instead of asking whether that's okay and that makes sense, it's like, no, this is not that exact thing. And so that can't work. And so I think that if you do that, you're going to leave out a lot of stuff that could potentially be very helpful for your decarbonisation strategy going forward. And, you know, when people talk about 10 gigawatts in 2030, that is so much.
Yeah.
And 2030 in infrastructure terms is, I was going to say tomorrow, but it's not even tomorrow, it's yesterday, it's like last week. So we really need to get moving on this if you want to meet that goal in 2030. Otherwise, there's just no way. So I think, we know we've all said it, it's a key message from this panel, more pragmatism, more looking at the fundamentals and supporting those projects that really make sense. And that's what we're seeing in other markets, to be frank, like the Japanese market, as was mentioned, is that they're taking a very practical approach. What's the carbon intensity of this product? How can we reduce the carbon intensity? And that's ultimately what we're all trying to do, right? So that would be my take on it.
Yep. You're describing a very favorite German discussion about technology, openness, neutrality. That's something we really indulge in all the time. So we recently had it with heat pumps. But Tom, you are as an infrastructure, and Katharina, I would ask you the same question. With how many potential technology options of the future could you cope, or would you say, oh, in the end we have to settle on a certain number because we cannot build like 65 terminals in Antwerp?
It's a pity, but it's just impossible to make a choice or a selection, because in fact we have three challenges at the same time. We have, first of all, as I said, we are the biggest petrochemical cluster. We need a lot of ammonia as a feedstock. So 50% of what we will import, and I mentioned the figures before, which are huge, 50% will stay in the form of ammonia. But it has to be changed from color. Yeah? It has to become green. So ammonia is big for sure. We are big today. We are the biggest ammonia cluster already today in Europe. So it will only grow. So that's a given. Second, we will have ammonia or something else as heat generation, heavy duty transport, heavy industry, as we all have. Can be ammonia, can be something else. We'll see. And then we have the maritime business, yeah, which is shifting over time also. From fossil, almost everybody is going now into LNG, dual fuel. The next one will be methanol. We didn't discuss a lot about methanol, but for sure the full maritime business goes over methanol to maybe arrive between 2030, 2035 at ammonia. But we don't have an engine yet. Yeah? So that's also a technical challenge. So it means that we have taken a decision as a port, as an infrastructure builder, that we have to be a multi-fuel port. So it means that we need to get all type of fuels on both platforms in different terminals, makes it complex. Also on bunkering facilities, makes it extremely challenging, but we have no choice because the type of molecule will change per industry we are focusing on and will change over time. And that's the complexity we have to deal with. Yeah.
Katharina, great.
Well, what we do is first show that things work. So one saying, for instance, is gas grids can't used for hydrogen because hydrogen is dangerous and can't be shipped through the same pipeline. So what we did first is to show that it works. Not to demonstrate on newly built pipelines, but took an existing system somewhere in Northern Westphalia, took it out of the public supply and just filled it with 100% hydrogen to see what the material is doing. So which material is working, what is the pumps, the valves, the compressions, what is the customer saying. Just to prove what we also have to have standardization and certification. I mean, we are very good in certification in Germany, but somebody has to do the first step and to show that it works. That is what we do. Coming to the discussion, which technology is it in the end of the day? Yeah, hopefully a whole bunch of. So you talk about ammonia, others will need pure hydrogen. Others will get green methanol, ethanol, or even green steel or some other products. We have to be open. When it comes to the transport industry, of course we will see electrification. We will see a lot of electrification in the transport sector. On the other hand, there will be much room for hydrogen or other derivatives or e-fuels because you can't use the same system. The EU itself counts that in 2035, still 40% of the existing personal car fleet is in place. So if these 40% old car fleet has to contribute to climate change, they have to have sustainable fuels. So that is very, very clear. But European regulation tries to push it out. And here again, I'm sometimes scared if some regulator in Berlin or Brussels tells me we have now every technical solution we need for the next 20 or 30 years. I think, oh, hopefully not. Hopefully we will invent something new and invent our technologies. But the regulation can't drop them out. So if you have now a very narrow regulation, you won't allow new technology to jump into the framework. And I think that is a really danger. We have to have open and be open to new technologies and solutions. Otherwise, other markets will do and will take our innovative industries and make them there happy, but not in Europe.
Yeah, I love this paradigm. I call it the end of technology history paradigm, which says, okay, so history tells us that at some point the technology has been final forever, and this is just not the case. I mean, if this would be like that, we still would have stone wheels for cars. So that's that's something we really have to be sure about. This is not going to happen. So I would like to close now, because we are almost finished with a very short last round. So I think we've been optimistic in a way. We've been a bit critical in a way. But if you look at 2045, what do you think? Are we having a sort of an ecosystem where we have abundant amounts of green molecules being freely transported around the globe, and providing a possibility to make our businesses, our societies climate neutral? And perhaps one wish you would combine with this, one wish from your perspective to make this happen. Clara. I know everybody on panels likes these questions.
I hope that I'm an optimist like the rest of the panel, so I hope that that's the case. I think that what we do now is hugely determinative as to whether we're going to get there. If we are capable to start doing this stuff on a large scale now, then I think that we will. If we're chasing our tails and looking for perfection and not doing anything, then we will not. And so if I had one wish, it would be that we all feel the sense of urgency right now to get things done on a large scale. No more lighthouse, time to get to business and to do things big, because that's going to take us to the world that you just spoken about.
Lavinia.
I'm also optimistic. I'm also optimistic. I hope we will see that, and I think we will. And in order to get there, I think we need to have also liquid markets, ideally a tradable product. So it needs standardization, credibility, and it will also help with matching supply and demand.
Thank you. Erika.
Yeah. Also optimistic, and I agree with what both of you said. And I think as a next step, what we should do really to make a stock-taking exercise to see where we are today, where do we need to, what should the next steps be, what is the demand, where do we have it, so that we really can connect the dots. And I think this we can do very fast. And we also have to do it because there will still in these coming years a lot of public support being needed, also to have a good base to decide where the public money and the public support should go.
Tom.
In fact, I wish our European and national policymakers a lot of pragmatism, as we wish them. That we, as Katarina mentioned, that we are not only striving to be the best in class, but to be in the class, and that our industry is still in Europe. That's really what I hope for and want to fight for.
Katarina.
So if I would have a wish, it would be courage, speed, and pragmatism. I think then we are much better off than we are now.
Thank you. It was an amazing panel. I thank you all. I mean, what my takeaway is, first of all, I loved it that we haven't talked about color schemes once. Color schemes used to be the most embarrassing aspect of any hydrogen discussion over the last years. You can't build a global market on color schemes. You can bombs and you can do a lot with color schemes, but not build a global hydrogen market. Thank you for not mentioning this. So I think it's over. We don't have to discuss it. What I take away as well is, it's pragmatism. We have to try out things. We have to really do things and not talk about it. And I think this is my experience with Australians. They have this spirit of, let's just hammer it out. Let's just do it. That's something we should embrace. Flexibility and scaling. And I think what my takeaway, my big takeaway is, we really have to embrace the ingenuity of people, of businesses, of sciences, and so on. And we should unleash it and not leash it with even well-meant regulatory frameworks. Thank you.
Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP28 in Dubai. Ambitious, just together.